Welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Show with Ryan Greenberg and Nick Kalfas. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Millionaire Show. We're here with Ben Morgan, another local Maryland guy. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
Awesome. Good. Nick, how you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Good. All right, Ben. Thanks for coming out today. We have some questions for you. So, can you give us like a brief background? Kind of after high school, did you have any formal education? What was your job after that? And then kind of how did it just lead into real estate? I know we talked off air, but we're gonna re-talk.
No problem. So yeah, my name is Benjamin Morgan. I'm from Maryland. I grew up in Maryland. Grew up in Howard County. Went to Towson State University. Studied business. And when I got out of school, I'm always or have always been good in sales. So that's what I started to do. I was in sales. I sold cars. I sold retail, and then I found the jewel, and that's real estate. So I've been in real estate for a little over 23 years. I started off in the mortgage industry, so on one side of the real estate, and then I went from being a mortgage loan officer to a manager of a group of people in a mortgage company. And then I moved out to California, Newport Beach, where I opened my own net branch in San Diego and also in Newport Beach. So I had two offices out there. Ran that for about 4 years. And then, of course, the bubble burst.
So this was like '08 time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the bubble burst. So then I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm licking my wounds, trying to figure out what to do with the markets because I loved real estate, right? So I knew that was the path that I wanted to be in for the rest of my career. So I ended up moving back to Maryland from California, and then I got into the other side of real estate. And the other side of real estate is flipping houses. I got my license as a licensed agent, and that's where we are now. So right now, I have a flipping company, which we do about 40 plus houses a year. I have a lending company where we lend hard money only for investors. We also, like I said before, I'm a licensed agent in Maryland and PA. And then I'm in the process of being licensed in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Florida. And then I have my multifamily business as well, which I have 3 other partners on. And that's all impact.
So going back to your college, you said you went to college for business. Did that help you when you started to, create your own business?
It should have.
But it didn't?
Also, you dated yourself a little bit with Towson State.
Yeah.
So how old did you go to actual Towson State, or was
I
it?
did.
You did.
I did.
Okay, so if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I'm 48.
Okay, so Towson State went to business. Should have helped.
Should have helped.
Yeah.
So I was in a fraternity, SAE from Towson, and yeah, we'll let you think about that. But for the most part, yeah, I was in sales. So I love talking to people. I love being around people. I love exploring and helping out as much as I can people that I come across. So
Awesome. So your first real estate investment from the mortgage industry to now real estate investing was the first one a flip?
it was.
It was. And how did that go?
It went okay. It didn't go great because you don't know what you don't know, right? So we had some few hiccups because we probably went to 3 different subs, but it was normal because it was my first flip. It was in North Carolina. So it was a lot of cosmetic stuff, but with me being in California and doing a flip in North Carolina, I was out of state, and my family helped me, or my sister and my dad helped me at the time. So it was work in progress.
Were they living in North Carolina?
They were.
So that made it a little bit easier. I couldn't imagine being all the way in California and doing a flip across the country with no one there.
For your first one, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were they just managing subcontractors, essentially? They weren't doing, like, your dad wasn't physically swinging a hammer or anything like that?
He wasn't swinging a hammer. He was just meeting people and letting them in. I had already talked to the subs. I had already laid out what I needed to lay out. And when you think about it, when you're doing a flip, and I was already in mortgages, so the LTV, the lingo, the way structuring a deal, I was very familiar with. It's just the point of talking to a contractor and getting the prices that I need to kind of conform to my budget.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, yes, it was my first flip, but I've been in mortgages, so the numbers, it's a number game, right?
Right.
If you get that right, then you're good.
And what year was that first flip that you did?
Oh wow.
Just a general. Was it like
Was it after the crash? Like
no?
after?
It had to
No.
be before.
It's
Okay.
before the crash.
Some simple math. 23 years minus. So around 2000, something like that.
Yeah.
2001.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you did that flip, like what made you decide to go into flipping, which is like, as we know, one of the riskier real estate investments that we have now is flipping. Like what made you decide on flipping versus rentals or what your just, syndications or anything like that?
The amount of cash that you can get. At that time, the mindset that I was in is I wanted larger amounts of cash because I was young, right?
Right.
I wanted that big bank account. The long passive income hadn't set into my head yet. That's where I'm now. I want more passive income and less. You get your big chunk of money now, but then you got to do it all over again to get that big chunk again.
Yeah.
Now I'm in the mindset where I want to have passive income.
So if you could go back to that time, would you still do the flips or would you have focused more on buy and holds at that time?
Honestly, man, I think I would do exactly how I have done because I wouldn't be where I am.
That's awesome.
But if you can take that out of consideration, if you can, like, let's say you started over today, would you, and started over from a young age when you were 23 years ago when you first started, would you start out flipping to get cash?
I
Or
would.
would your mindset now obviously is different? So if you were to speak to a younger person today, would you tell them it's more beneficial to flip houses or maybe they're just chasing that quick cash and not thinking long term and maybe they should focus more on the buy and hold?
I would say do a little bit of everything to diversify yourself. That way, you have experience in all of the aspects of rental, the multifamily, or the flip, and then you have all that passive income, that large chunks. So you're taking advantage of everything. That's what I would tell myself.
So one question that I have, because a lot of people they get too like scatterbrained when they're trying to do multiple things. And I know in our business, like we have a property management division, we have a construction division, a sales division. If we have, some of our employees that do a little bit of everything, sometimes they get scatterbrained because they're not focused. When you're starting out, somebody, because we're gearing towards people that are trying to get maybe their first deal or that, they're trying to start real estate investing. Would you say like it's good if you're diversifying early on, or should you learn one thing and focus on it? Because I would argue that it's kind of hard to like learn how to flip a house, but then at the same time also learn how to syndicate multifamilies, and at the same time learn how to renovate and do rental properties, because that's a completely different formula than flips. So if somebody was just starting out now, would you say like it's better to focus, or it's better to just kind of dip your toes into each individual thing?
I would say if they're starting out, I would focus on something, get good
Just
at
pick
it.
one. Yeah, I would agree, because one of the big problems that we have now is that you have to switch from one brain to another. So I'm on a phone with a property management client, and then a construction client calls with a problem, and just doing that switch. I read somewhere recently that, or I think somebody told me this, that every time you switch tasks, it takes about 22 minutes to get into that
task again.
workflow.
I think where did I read that? I read that too somewhere or listened to it. But absolutely, yeah, it takes a little bit of time for you. That's why you don't. They always say that you should not multitask.
Right. It's not a real thing. People say
Right.
it's not even a real thing. Like
Right.
you're not doing one thing well.
Right.
So, and after he told me that, I'm like, that's true, because every time somebody calls me when I'm in the middle of writing an estimate, I can't get back into writing that estimate, or I have to come back to it later because it just screwed up your workflow. And then, then I'm on to the next thing, and then somebody else calls, and then you're looking at Instagram or you post it on Facebook or whatever. So yeah, I think focusing on one of those things, And obviously 23 years ago, we had a different market and a
Right.
different time. Like, what was the rates like back then?
Sevens.
Sevens?
Is
Okay.
that for
So,
like hard money?
Oh, hard money. I mean, conventional, you're probably in the sevens. Hard money was 12. It's like
so
12
it's
and
about the
2.
same.
Yeah. I mean,
It's funny because
hard.
everybody's freaking out now about 7% rates, but
Right.
we've seen it obviously before Nick and I's time. We've only been investing.
About
I've been
five
since
years.
2018,
Yep.
2016 or 2018. I bought my first house I think in 2016, but the rates were 2%, 3%. I think I locked in a couple of under 3% rates, and now people are starting to lose their minds. Do you think that's merited? Do you think that people should be losing their minds, or do you think that people should just, adjust? And what's your kind of take on the current market?
Oh, well, the market is definitely correcting itself. Should people freak out? No, because it's correcting itself. People that are freaking out are just not used to it. And if they look at the past it went up high and then it went back right down. So the same thing will happen again.
I can't wait for that day.
Yeah.
But
Well,
no, I feel like with low inventory now, there's still buyers, and I feel like when it's first spiked up, there was a lot of buyers who were like pulling back, but now they're in the realization like this is the rate now, and if I want to buy a house now, then I'm gonna go and do it. And there's not that much inventory, so the houses are still selling.
they are. And that's kind of the things that we're looking at because we buy short-term rental, luxury short-term rentals. And if they're qualifying right now at I think we have one at 9.5% rate. If they are qualifying right now, when those rates go down, it's already a cash cow right
Right.
now, but it's gonna be even more of a cash cow once the rates go down.
So are they higher now at 9.5 because it's short term rental?
Yes.
Okay.
So do they? So I actually was going to get a loan for the house that we bought in Tampa through a lender that was going to qualify us. We ended up negotiating seller financing on it, which was the best situation that we could get. But the lender that we were going to use was going to qualify us based on the Air DNA data. Is that what is happening with yours? Mm-hmm. They're just taking Air DNA and they're saying, okay, it's 62% occupancy, it's $500 a night, and this is your loan.
It's a little mixture of, it depends on the bank, but yes, Air DNA definitely plays a role in how they underwrite it.
And that is so 9.5 is specifically because it's a short-term rental. If you had a long-term tenant in there and they were paying, X amount over your PITI, would it be a lower rate?
Yeah, you can probably go for a DSCR loan for in the sevens.
Yeah, I just closed one at 7.5.
Yeah.
And I'm under contract on another one for
They just
just
went down
about.
recently under 7.
Did they?
Yeah.
So you started buying, you started flipping. When did you start it? First of all, wait, let me backtrack because you mentioned about becoming an agent in multiple states. Why are you doing that? And are there people that you have in place in those states that are helping you out with those transactions? Like, why are you becoming licensed in so many states when it's kind of difficult to? Are you gonna fly down and show a house in Florida? Are you gonna like what's your strategy on getting your license so many places?
Property management. So
Because some places you need to have your real estate license to be a property manager,
yes.
such as Florida.
Yes.
Yeah. I
So
know
we're opening a short-term rental property management company. So I'm being proactive on some of the areas that we're looking at. We have a company down in Panama City Beach. We have 2 short-term rentals in Panama City Beach, and we have one in Orlando. So I'm being proactive, being licensed because it's gonna happen. And then also for whatever like Maryland, you can't wholesale a property unless you have a license.
Well, that's new, right?
That's new.
Brand
So
new.
that's coming down the pipeline through all 50 states. So
Which
it's
is
gonna
probably good for
Yeah.
the overall business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean it provides the buyers and sellers with an agent or someone that is held accountable for
Right.
something, as
Yeah, yeah.
opposed to a regular wholesaler that doesn't have a license and does everything on a whim. you know.
So it's going to be weird though to see how they end up doing, like the assignment fees are now going to turn into commission, and then the broker is going to get a piece of all of that. Like I'm interested to see how it ends up
Yeah,
turning out,
me too.
because it's just like, hey, the assignment fee's this, and okay, here's the check at closing. Like it's very
It's a gray
it's
area.
it's very, yeah,
Yeah.
Wild West right now.
And that's why they're asking for people that are wholesaling to be licensed, so now they can have some kind of control.
Right.
What kind of control? I think it's going to be per state, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, to answer your question, that's why I'm getting licensed, because with us opening a short-term rental property management company, someone in that the higher end, or the management, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
has to be licensed.
So, what are some of the most important aspects of running an Airbnb business? I know you said you had some down in Florida. Do you have somebody there who is, in my opinion, I would think a cleaning lady is at the top of the list. They have to go in after someone, gets out of the property, make sure everything is good and not broken, and then clean the property. In your eyes, like what's the most important, few aspects of owning Airbnb properties?
Knowing your area, having a great cleaning service, and knowing the systems, and having systems that actually work all together. And what I say by that, I mean like the lock, anywhere from the locks, the HVAC, the TVs. Since you're going to be out of state, you want to be able to look at your phone, excuse me, or look at your computer, and be able to take care of that property all at once. But a lot of times what happens is people go and buy a short-term rental, and then they don't have all those at their fingertips. So then they're out of state. They can't control the HVAC. They can't control the TVs or the stations or the locks. Or they have all these systems that they're going to different apps.
So one of the things that you mentioned is systems. Do you have some sort of like general system that works and you use for all of your Airbnb properties, regardless if it's in Florida or North Carolina or wherever else that you're investing? And it's the same thing that you implement everywhere
Yes.
with different people?
Yes. That's the goal. Because since we have our main company, and then we have subsidiaries of different areas. Each area is going to have the same systems. So we all operate and know what to do and how to do it.
So, like, what kind of system or app do you use to control different features of the home?
Oh, there's so many features. We have Guesty, there's Logify, there is
Like I know the locks are a big thing. Like you need the smart lock, so it constantly is switching the code to the people, different codes and stuff like that.
yep.
And all of that stuff, do you physically, I mean, not physically, but do you do that management, or do you have like a central person that's doing it for all of your properties?
We have a short-term rental management, and she takes care of a good 5, 6, 7 properties that we have, and then anything else that we will get in the future, she'll handle.
Now, one of the things is cleaning with short-term rentals, and I'm asking a lot of questions because we are just about to go live on our short-term rental in Tampa, and for us, I'm stressing out a little bit about, like, for a cleaning person, if you call this person and they say, yes, I'm going to do the cleaning on Sunday, and you have 3 hours to do it because the people are coming in and the people are leaving, whatever, and they cancel on you, do you have like a stack of cleaners to call
Absolutely.
at
We
every
have,
one of your properties, basically?
in PCB, we have 4,
Okay.
just as backups. The main person that works for us, she has about 5 crews.
Okay.
So she's pretty big. So she handles a lot. But we do have backup, and that's the key thing. Because if something goes wrong, or her people can't come to like you said, they call out, then we have to have backup, because everything happens right away.
Right.
You know what I mean?
People
you
leave
got
at 11. They come in
exactly.
at 3 or 4 or whatever. You got a very short window to change all the sheets, to do all whatever laundry needs to be done, clean all whatever needs to be done. That to me is very stressful because you have this much time. When I have a long-term rental, I know that they're moving out June 1st. I know that in March.
Right.
So in April, I'm like getting ready and, starting to send people to get things turned over and make sure everything. Now you have literal hours to get everything turned over. And then if you don't, you can get a bad rating. And like what happened to us
Oh yeah,
in
that was
San Diego, we went to
San Diego.
DPCon, and the last minute, like we were driving to our Airbnb, it was like 3:58. We check in at 4 o'clock, and he calls us and says, "Hey, there was a leak in your unit. The contractors are there, but they're not going to get done." And like we were just across the country and had nowhere to go. Essentially, luckily he was able to put us in a different place or whatever. But he didn't really handle that situation that well, and that whole thing, like he didn't end up getting that good of a rating,
Right.
and if that happens, then your business gets affected.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do you deal with that, with bad ratings and avoiding that? What's a couple of like tips to avoid?
Don't get bad ratings.
Don't get bad ratings. Good one.
Well, can you tell us about some of the bigger issues that you've had that maybe could have potentially led to a bad rating, but maybe didn't?
Well, just recently, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, we had a family, mom and her children, come up, and they wanted to use the grill. The grill was out of gas, and we didn't have access to get another container. So we got a bad review. And when I say bad review, it was a 4 instead of a 5. But we kept in close communication. She wasn't upset, but we didn't get a 5. You know what I mean? But we also provided her with a free night stay at any future, next year or whatever. So she was happy with that. So to answer your question, it's all about communication. If you stay in communication with someone that's having a problem with something, then that will relieve their stress and their anger, if you will. Just like any normal situation, right?
So I understand that from the perspective of being a landlord. If tenants, would communicate effectively with me, like for example, saying that they're going to be late on the rent, like maybe the 15th, I would be more, I won't be stressed out about it because they're communicating. But if they don't pay rent and it's past the 5th and the late fees now attached to their ledger and they don't answer, and then it's like, then I start stressing out. Like when like communication is very important in any business, and that's how I can relate to that in my
It's
rental business.
the unknowns, right? Because your mind just wanders. You're like, I
Do
don't know what's going on.
this person? Do I have to go through the whole process? This whole thing, yeah. So you're doing the short-term rentals now. We've been following you on. Well, I've been following you on Facebook, and you do a lot of multifamily stuff.
I do.
And it seems like you are raising money, syndicating money. And so, how did you get into that, and what kind of, set you off into the multifamily world? We're two guys. We own a lot of single family. I manage a lot of single family. I manage some small multifamily stuff. But every time I've tried to get into multifamily, I've made an offer on a property. Most all of them are here in Baltimore. It seems like we either got beat by one of the big guys that have more money than us or cheaper access to money. What made you take the step into multifamily? Did you start at single family first, and then
I did. So I have a flipping company, and we do about 40 flips a year. So I tried to get into multifamily while flipping, but I was not successful. And when I say not successful, I just didn't know what I didn't know, and I wasn't able to properly underwrite the multifamily buildings because I didn't know how to do it. Like it's not just the purchase price and then how much you're getting in rents. There's a lot more that comes with underwriting. It's expenses. It's the taxes, everything, the cap rate. So to answer your question, it's just like I had to make the decision that I wanted to do more than just flip, right? And I said, okay, I'm going to go out. I'm going to find myself a COO to run the day-to-day operations for the flipping company so I can take myself out of the business and go and start a new business and then go full force with that business in multifamily. Because right now, like I said before, I'm 48, so I want to have passive income now. I want to provide a legacy for my family, And that's why I got into multifamily, because the passive income is what provides wealth in real estate.
So I love what you said about, taking yourself out of the flipping business. I feel like Ryan and I had the same ideas sometimes, taking ourselves out of the business. What did that look like for you to replace yourself with a COO
Yeah,
and then
Stressful.
we've
start another
both failed
business?
at that exact thing
Stressful.
by removing ourselves from the business. I've not been able to do it. Like
Yeah.
we leave for a week or something, and we went to Hawaii recently, and
Oh,
it's like
nice.
we both have to be fully working, like actively answering phone calls, this and that. Like, how long was the process before you trusted this person that you hired to just run your business that you built?
It was a good 4 months
Oh wow,
until
that's a
I
lot
could.
shorter than I thought it would be.
Yeah, well, I looked at it like I found my COO that's now through Wise Hire. Have you ever heard of Culture Index?
No.
Culture Index, look into that, because Culture Index, what that does is that provides you with what that specific person. So the person comes in and he or she takes a survey. It's not hard. It's just words, about 100 words, and you pick the words that best describes you, right? And then once you go in and you fill out all the words, you get the survey back. It tells you what that person is, how they are, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, how they like to work, what they don't like to work, like what motivates them, what doesn't motivate. It's crazy. If I took it, and then our rep from Culture Index went down, he's like, you like to do this, you don't like to do this, you are slow to pull the trigger on certain things. And it blew my mind. I mean, that's what helped me find my CEO, because, and I never forget, I had 15, maybe 15, 16 people come in, interview, that I narrowed it down to. Then it narrowed down to two. And I started talking to my rep, and he was like, Eric is my COO. And he said, if you don't pick this guy, I'm going to come in up to Maryland and karate chop you. And that, because he said his motivation, his drive, his know-how was all the things you're looking for in a COO. He didn't come from real estate, which was great, because then I could just train him on the things that he needs to have happen. But yeah, so then I hired him, and he's been doing great.
And how long ago was that?
It was about this time last year.
Nice. So culture index is the test that you take to determine your personality per se. And then it was, what was it, Wise Hire?
Wise Hires, it's like where you put your resumes.
And then who was the guy that was telling you to hire your COO? Was
The
that
rep
was
from
he?
Culture Index.
Okay.
Culture Index is the company name.
So they put you in touch with the rep when you take the assessment?
No, I went to Culture Index. They assigned me a rep.
Okay.
And then you actually fly to, I think it was Atlanta, to get trained on how to, like, you literally have to know how to read. It's dots. And it's like different levels of dots on a piece of paper from their survey. You have to know how to read it. But yeah, you have to go for training, know how to read the survey. But yeah, it turned out very, very well. Like, people are starting to use Culture Index, just because there was a gentleman there that he was the mayor of somewhere. I forget, don't quote me on this, but he had his staff come there so they can properly understand the Culture Index surveys, so they can hire the right people.
So it's like a personality test,
It is.
essentially.
It's exactly a personality test, but it's for the better. And I would always recommend someone taking a Culture Index test, so you can manage them correctly, because it's not a bad thing. Like, nothing's wrong on the test. It just simply shows you as the employer how to manage them.
Yeah, and I think that's super important because there's some things that I notice, like some of my employees are not as motivated by money or extra, income. They're more motivated by just being praised and having more responsibility, or just
Yep.
that title or whatever it is. Everybody has their own thing. Like, I'm a money guy. Like, you pay me more, I do more. Like, that's how my brain works. But some people, they don't even want more. They want to have their life the way that they have it with this job being, 8 to 5 or whatever that is, and that's what their value is
Yep.
is personal time or time with their family, whatever. And I think that's comes with personality, with understanding who the people are that work for you.
It was a game changer. Like we use that for everything, every hire, and just in general, because sometimes a company doesn't have their people in the right seats. They're great workers, they're great employees, it's a great company, but if they tweak their systems and tweak their people with culture index, their company would boost.
We gotta do that.
Yeah. Everybody's getting fired next week. Going to culture index.
Starting over.
Going to culture index, starting over. So now, now that you're into, multifamilies, you kind of stepped away a little bit from the flipping business. What is your current role in what you're doing in your businesses?
So right now, as far as the multifamily business, which is called impact investing, I run the day-to-day operations with my other partner.
And that's raising money, finding deals, underwriting deals, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And so your flipping business and your multifamily business, you have it spread across different states.
Correct.
Is there a certain criteria that you're looking for when you look for different states, like, more landlord friendly states versus tenant friendly states, or what makes you say, oh, Florida is a good one, or
For multifamily?
just in general, like flipping or wherever you're looking into, like, I wouldn't never, for me, it's like, where would I look next? I just know Baltimore's right up the road. So
Right.
it's just easy to go for me to go find houses there and to rebuild them and to rent them out. That's easy because I live here. What makes you decide, okay, North Carolina is a good market to look at? Because there's a lot of houses for sale in this country. And for you to narrow down, like, you can't look at every house in every state. What makes you choose the states that you're in?
Boots on the ground would be one of the deciding factors. Right now, the flipping company is only in Maryland and PA. We just stay there.
Okay.
As far as the multifamily, we go where we have boots on the ground or partnerships.
Okay.
Because without those, it's like you're starting over in that said market without boots on the ground, without anything. So for the simple fact of we don't want to start over in an area, we want to have boots on the ground.
Do you find it difficult to manage different people in different places with different laws and different codes and all that kind of stuff? Like certain places, like, Florida versus Maryland, we obviously have very different building codes due to hurricanes. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to have hurricane windows here versus there you do. And with our Florida house, I'm learning more of that. I'm a general contractor here, but I don't know anything about general contracting there because they use a different roof. They'd use a different, all these things are different. Have you, like, what is your way of cutting that learning curve down when you go to different places?
Just the boots on the. That's why
Just- that's
that's
why.
why you want to have boots on the ground, because some of those boots on the ground will have the knowledge, and
Okay.
and that's one of the things that we do set up when we go into a certain area. We find the boots on the ground. We find the people that know what they're doing, and we partner with them. So if we go to a different state, that's the first thing that we're going to do. We're going to find boots on the ground.
So I noticed from your Facebook feed that you are on airplanes a lot.
Yes.
How often do you have to go to these places to be in person and solve problems?
I don't ever have to go, but I love to go
Okay.
because I love to see the different areas. I love traveling. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to go and be in multifamily, because the passive income and be able to travel. My fiance, soon to be wife, we love to travel. So that's why short-term rentals is attracted to us too, because we want to get those luxury short-term rentals that are in and on the beach and in warm areas, or on a lake, in a cabin or something, or on a lake with a cabin, something like that.
So before the show, you mentioned that you guys like to focus on small to mid multifamily deals. Could you go into depth on the unit count on small versus mid, and also like what you look for in regards to those type of deals?
Well, small to mid is anywhere from 5 units up to 50. I don't mind 50, but we're getting to the point where we're specifically going after only short-term rentals, luxury short-term rentals. So the one we have in the two that we have in Panama City Beach, one was we bought for 1 point, yeah, 1,075,000, I think. And then we have the one that we're under contract right now. It's 4.4.
That's in Panama City as well.
And
Yeah,
that's just one house.
that's one house, 3 floors, elevator, right on the beach.
So how do you underwrite a deal that's that expensive? As far as like, do
You
you
have
pull up
to.
DNA and it tells you like what $1 million homes are renting for on Airbnb?
No, you have to look at AirDNA. You have to look at the expenses and taxes and what income down the street, the surrounding areas, what they're, you have to take into consideration what everybody else is doing, comps, if you will, and then take that average.
Now, do you ever worry about buying a $4 million home? There's finishes in there that are super expensive, right? Vanities, everything. Like the house in Tampa that we just bought has marble walls in all the bathrooms.
It's awesome.
And it's yeah. In one side of my brain, I'm like, it's awesome when I come and visit here. Then on the other side, I'm like, as a landlord up here, I'm like, God, I can't imagine having to fix this after these tenants move out. Because
Right.
when we do it, it's like, okay, they destroyed a vanity. Well, that's $120 or less. Like we can put a new vanity in there. It's not a big deal. With these high-end homes, like how do you manage people coming in for a week? Have you had a lot of issues with that, with people breaking stuff?
No, we haven't had. We might have had maybe one person take a soap dish that was a pretty mermaid or something like that. But for the most part, when you got high end properties, you're not going to have those people that are going to come in and steal things from $1 million property because they just spent $5,000-6,000 for that week, right? So are they really going to come in and steal stuff from that house?
Yeah, I don't even mean just stealing stuff, just like
Or
breaking something, whatever, like just stupid stuff that just ends up happening when people live in your place for a week.
Yeah, well, that too. I mean, but we have deposits, and in our not bylaws, but in our small print, it's if you break something, you're paying for it. And,
Right.
and under Airbnb or VRBO, they have insurance that covers us.
So here in Baltimore, my buy box is what makes sense for me to have a long term rental would be something under 250,000, right? And that's like 250,000 ARV. Around that, maybe a little bit more, maybe definitely less at most times. But how do you have like a limit on like, so if you're buying a $4 million property now, is there kind of like a buy box where you can't go over to where it won't make sense?
No, yes, there is a buy box that we can't go over, but it depends on the area, and it depends on the area and what they're bringing in as far as their income. Like, what's the potential of that short term rental?
So what's
You know
the
what I mean?
occupancy rate on that $4 million property?
It is. It doesn't go off of occupancy rate. It goes off of income. So that property will bring in about 600, if not more, a year
Gross.
gross.
Okay. And then minus your PITI, cleaning people,
Yeah, and then
anything like that.
we're the short term rental property management company. So that's another stream of income we're getting off of our own company or our own property.
And that's usually what, 20%?
20%.
But is the 600 brought in? Is that's not based on like how many times it'll be rented to come up with the occupancy rate, or is that not accounted for?
Has that just been an average for you?
Yeah, that's actually the property down the street. It's in Margaritaville, so they have past data, and that's what we're going off of.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big ticket for one place.
And guys, and that's the reason that we were looking at and tweaking the things that we're doing now and going more on short-term rentals, because if you look at short-term rentals as a whole, they spit out a lot of cash and they have less expenses. Higher end luxury properties, higher end people are going to still travel no matter what the economy, right? So why not? And if you look at the 100 unit properties that don't even spit out 600 grand a year, that's why we're like, that makes sense, because you're still going to get your cost segregation on that property. You're still going to get your income, but it's less management.
How much do you have to put down on a property?
30%.
30%.
Yeah.
So do you syndicate your down payments and then finance the rest with the banks?
Yep. Our raise on that specific property was 1.6.
Okay. And you pay them back. Are they equity partners? Are they debt partners? How do you usually
Equity partners.
equity partners? And do you have it like, all right, so this property is $1 million. We have to raise $300,000. If you give me 100,000, you're getting X amount of shares essentially,
Well,
or percentage.
It's worked out on our analyzer where we're giving either anywhere from 8 to 10% preferable rate. Okay. And then we tell them exactly what they're going to make as far as the cash on cash that is projected, and then what their IRR would be.
Okay. So they're getting a rate of return and a piece of the pie.
Yes. And 9 times out of 10, most of our deals are 2x multiples, if not higher.
Okay. And how long do you lock in their money for? Do you tell them they have to have it, you're not going to get paid for 24 months or 12 months or
5 years.
5 years?
It's usually it's anywhere from 3, 5, and 10.
Okay.
And it really depends. It really depends on the deal, because say this Margaritaville property, we might be able to renovate or refi it in 3 years as opposed to holding it for 5 years. So in that 3 year time frame, in that 3 years, we'll look at if we can refinance that property, pull out the cash, pay our investors back, and then they will become infinite invested in that property because they have all their capital back.
So they got their capital back and they still have a little chunk.
They have, yep, and they're still getting their passive income. So it's kind of a win-win scenario. But worst case scenario, we're not able to refinance. We hold it for 5 years. We either sell it at 5 years or we refinance in 5 years.
And you're just hoping that you're able to pull out that money and pay the people back, make them flush, and then you keep the.
Yep.
How many units do you have right now if you counted all your syndications and everything like that?
386.
Wow, that's a very exact number.
We are capital raising right now for 3 deals. So yes, that went in our slide deck. So I know 100% what our number is.
And when you're raising money, what is one of the best strategies that you've found for raising private capital?
The best strategy is,
like, you just post it on Facebook and then people are like, "Sure, Ben, here's $1 million."
I wish.
Right? Like, you got to do some more work, right? What's the
there's-
work involved in that?
The work is posting and talking to a lot of people, because you never know who is wanting to invest. You never know who has that $1 million underneath their mattress. You never know, because people are quiet and they stay to themselves until they either find something they like or somebody talks to them about investing and they educate them. So we try to educate people to help them in real estate any way we can.
Okay.
So, I know you said you had a lending business also. Can you touch on that a little bit? Like how did you get involved in lending and what that looks like?
Yeah. So like I was saying, I was loan officer, then I had my own mortgage company. So that was just a natural. I just have myself set up as a broker. I don't use it a lot, but at some point I will, if that makes sense.
So is it more conventional loans or hard money?
No. It's everything I do is geared on investor side of things, because when you take for instance, when you are a licensed agent and you try to help an investor and then you try to help a traditional sale, they're two different people. Nothing wrong with either one of them, but this investor's looking for something different, and
Yeah, they don't have to make their wife happy.
right, or they don't have a dog, they don't have certain things that they're looking for. They're just looking at the number and are they making money? Over here you have the couple, the homeowner, that this is going to be their maybe forever home, that you have to hold their hand,
Mm-hmm.
right? And which is not a bad thing, but it's two different animals. So
Yeah.
I want to stay focused on the investor side because it's a different animal, and that's what I'm used to. Is there anything wrong with the traditional? Absolutely not. But like we were talking before, be focused on one side of things and market that
So
those people.
multifamily investing versus residential investing, what are the pros and cons in your opinion on both of those?
Like single family rentals
Yep.
versus multifamily rentals.
Uh, okay, so multifamily compared to single family, you have one unit in a multifamily, one central location, one roof, as opposed to a single family over here where you have multiple roofs and not in the same area. So you're driving back and forth. It's not in the same area, so it's harder. And a lot of people don't know this, but multifamily real estate in general is a team sport. So if you're trying to do multifamily by yourself, it will be hard. Is it doable? Absolutely, but you won't be able to scale as fast as somebody that uses partnerships to scale. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
So one of the things that we had Brendan Turner on, and one of the things that he was saying about multifamilies that he likes, and he was actually targeting bigger than 50 units, and he was saying one of the things is because it actually is its own ecosystem. That's kind of how he described it. It's like you have the built-in property manager. You might have to tweak some of their systems. You might have to, implement something new to increase your value or decrease expenses or whatever. But with those big deals, you have its own, it can hold its own in the sense of you have somebody that's full time living there managing it, or the office is on site, all that stuff. Do you agree with that, kind of mindset that the 5 unit is actually maybe a little bit harder than the 50 unit because the 5 unit can't support its own management team? Like if you're just doing 5 units, for example, you need a couple of them to make a living. You can't just buy one.
Right.
But if you have 100 units, then it has its own kind of, ecosystem that comes with it.
I think that, a f- like you said, if you have a 5 unit, right, and one person doesn't pay, that's going to hurt. If you have a 100 unit and one person doesn't pay,
It is what it is.
right. So on that aspect, yes, that the 100 unit would be more advantageous than the 5 unit. But for us as a company, those are just place points, right? If that makes sense. Those are just more income coming in because our focus is short-term rentals, luxury rentals. So those are our 100 units, the short-term rentals. The five units, 10 units, or whatever are just placeholders. They're just stuff that we come across that we could do.
When did your mindset shift to focus more on luxury short-term rentals?
I would say this past year.
Gotcha.
I have five short-term rentals right now in Maryland, and they're in construction phases right now. One of the 5 units it's in Towson. We're actually refinancing right now and getting ready to stabilize and rent it up. So that's been a year, almost 13, 14 months in the making. We had to,
Wow.
yeah, we had to take that whole building down to the studs. So it's been a work in progress.
So when it comes to the small to mid-term, not the mid-term, the small to mid-sized multifamily properties, what kind of cap rate do you look for?
Less than 7, because it really depends, because since they're small, we want to make sure they're going to cash flow. And if we refinance, we want to make sure that we can cash flow, and then when we refinance, still cash flow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the correlation between, let's say you have a 6% cap rate versus, and you have a 6% interest? Is there like a correlation to where that kind of like zeroes it out to where you don't cash flow, or is there other factors that play
the expenses, the taxes. There's a lot of other things that come into play for that.
Gotcha.
So, out of your 386 units, how many right now are short term and how many are long term? I mean, it doesn't have to be, is it like 20% short term or 50% short term? It doesn't have to be an exact number,
It would
obviously.
be, I would say 15% is short term, or yeah,
Okay.
short term rentals.
Okay. So
Uh,
you're still more heavy on the long term rentals right
yeah,
now.
we have, excuse me, we have a 63 unit that we're closing on at the end of the month, a 43 unit next month, um, another 64 unit in Tennessee. Yeah, so
And those are all
yeah, those are long
long term
terms.
deals.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I couldn't imagine, I mean, how many people you would need on your staff to run hundreds of short term rentals because there's so much admin, management, communication. You're not answering tenant communications, right?
No.
So, what's like a good ratio for somebody to manage that? Like the communications between, like, is one person capable of doing 20 of them?
Absolutely. The thing that you have to think about too is a lot of the short term rental stuff is automated. So let's say somebody calls in or emails in, they get an automation. So when they check in, that's automated.
Right.
When they check out, that's automated. So a lot of the stuff that we put together for short term rentals are all automated. If they need to talk, if they have a problem, of course they'll talk to one of our team. But for the most part, a lot of the stuff is automated.
So, what's your goal as far as how many short-term rentals you'd like to have?
Well,
Or do you have a money goal in mind, like a cash flow goal or?
well, at the beginning of this year, we said we wanted to get to 1,000 doors. Through the last couple months, as we started to tweak our buy box to strictly short-term rentals, we haven't really talked about the amount that we want to end up with, but we did have a goal for Panama City, PCB. We by the end of the month, by the end of the year, we want to have 7 down there, and we have 2 already and 1 in Orlando.
What's the average cost of, I guess, an Airbnb that you look for in Panama City?
Anywhere from a million and up. It really depends because the one that's 4.4 is directly on the beach. Um, it's in Margaritaville, and it's 3 stories, elevator, pool inside. Um,
And what kind of like, so Panama City to me, I just think of spring break.
yeah,
What do like families travel there? Because spring breakers are not, you're not letting them rent your $4 million house, right?
right.
So that's another question that I had that's not even on my paper. Who and how are you vetting people that come in to rent these places that are $4 million houses or even $1 million house? I mean, it's a lot of money, right? Is there like, we look at credit score, we look at criminal history, eviction history, that kind of thing on the long term side. What are you doing on the short term side besides their Airbnb rating? Like, what if somebody just, there's an old guy, he'd never heard of Airbnb, but he wants to rent one, and he finds yours. He has no history on Airbnb. Can he rent your place?
He can.
And how do you make sure that that guy's not coming in and just throwing a rager and going to ruin your place? I mean, it's a
Well,
real question, right? I mean,
it,
Oh,
like,
it
no, for
is.
sure.
That's a
Yeah.
good. That's a great question. At the end of the day, there are no things set in place because that's discriminating. So they have insurance. Airbnb has millions and millions of insurance that cover us. So that would probably be the only way we could do it.
okay,
But think about it. If someone is going to come in and spend, I mean, our average night on PCB is a couple $1,000s.
right.
If you're going to spend a couple $1,000s on a place, are you going to mess it up?
Well, the
And
way I think about it is like, and of course I'm just like, my mind's kind of going. It's like, okay, so you got 10 guys coming to Panama City, and it's even if it's $2,000 a night. If there's 10 of us, it's not that big of a deal.
right.
So yes, it's an expensive thing and you're targeting, higher income earners and such, but there's always that chance that, daddy on his Airbnb account rents your place and then his 10 kids come and rage there for spring break for a week. And that's like kind of like a risk, I guess, that you would take, right? Just that's just all it is just a risk that
It
you're.
is. We do have a risk that we take, but we also have ring cameras. We also have sound what's it called? I forget what
I've
it's
heard of
called.
these, and I mentioned it to my partner in for the Tampa house, and so it's not recording them though. It's
No.
just
If it
measuring sound levels, right?
Right, if it reaches a certain decibel, then it notifies us, and then we reach out to him. Hey,
The neighbor called.
the noise is high. What's going on? Everything all right? And then you got to quiet it down. So we
Okay.
have things in place to kind of cut it off at the past before it even happens.
Right.
We the ring camera has we have one on the front and back. We see a large amount of people coming in because we get notified.
Right.
Then we'll reach out to them. Hey, we see all these people coming in. What's going on?
Okay. So
How
there
many-
are some things that help you
Yeah,
keep.
How many guests does that house sleep?
over 20,
Over
21.
20. So that's a party right there.
Yeah, right. That's a whole gaggle of people. That's a gym class. So when you're, looking for these deals, how do they typically come to you? Are you actively saying, okay, today I'm going to look in Tennessee, or tomorrow I'm going to look in Atlanta or Florida? How are you finding them? Do you build relationships with brokers and realtors in these areas and tell them, send me whatever you have? Or are you, today I'm going to look in Atlanta, or today I'm going to look in Tennessee? Like, how does that work for you, looking for new deals?
Well, that goes along with when we find people boots on the ground. So we have people sending us deals all the time in our areas, and that makes it easier because they know what our buy box is. We don't have to go looking for it because they're sending it to us.
So when you find a good deal, let's say it's in Tennessee or Florida, wherever it is, and now you're saying, okay, I need to raise $1.6 million. Do you, to get it under contract, do you write like just an LOI and say this is what I'm going to buy, and then you hope that you can, or are you putting down an EMD and then just praying that you can raise all that money? And have you had an issue with not coming up with all the capital?
So there's process. So if we find a property that we want to put a contract in, just like residential, you're going to put the LOI in first. They accept it. We have parameters that we want to go by, right? And then once we get that signed off on, then it goes into let's go mode, right? So we put it under contract. We actually have to put the EMD. It's usually 1 to 2% of whatever the purchase price is, but that's of course negotiable. We always try to do seller financing first, if that works.
Yeah.
But if we can, then we'll go regular finance. These days, with the way the market is, seller financing is definitely the way to go because you don't have to go jump
For
through all the
sure.
hoops.
That's why we pulled the trigger on this Tampa house. We made an offer on this same house in December, and they said basically kick rocks. And then they contacted us back, offered seller financing, and we were like, where do we sign?
That is the way to go.
And I got a cheaper rate than I would have went and got one with the bank. I got a 6% rate.
Yeah.
In a time where
let
people
us
are
know.
spending.
Let us know if you want somebody to manage it.
Do you have people in the Tampa area?
We will. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah.
So what are your long-term goals as far, in your business? Do you want to be actively working in your business? Do you have plans to retire? Like, what's your goals as far as like long-term goes?
My goals in long term, within the next 5 years, I do want to retire. I do want to have short term rental subsidiaries in at least 15 of the states, with at least 7 to 10 property management contracts in place in each of those.
Now you have kids in high school.
I do. And middle or elementary school too.
Are they interested in real estate? Are they like going to want to get involved in your business? What's your take on that?
Well, so far I have 2 daughters, both 16, and then I have 8-year-old twin boys. I have a stepdaughter.
So it's not two sets of twins.
No,
Okay,
I always have to clarify that. They look alike. I have 2 daughters that look alike, but they're not twins, but they're both 16-year-olds. They're from my fiance.
Okay.
And then my twins. So yes, to answer your question on, are they into real estate? Somewhat. Do they want to get into real estate? I don't know yet. So they're in that phase of they're 16 years old where they are just trying to find themselves. So obviously I'm an entrepreneur and I want to help them as much as I can. So what I've been trying to do is, like, we have a Wednesday meeting every week with the girls, and we have goals. For we have a Have you ever heard of the 12-hour work week?
I've heard of the
The
4 hour
four
work week.
hour.
Yeah,
Yeah, I heard of that one
12
too.
hour. Yeah. So we do a meeting every week, and we go over their goals for that week and make sure that they follow and keep going. Next month, we're actually going to be flying to Tennessee. I'm a part of a mastermind, and they're having a kids event where they're going to teach kids how to manage money. They're going to teach kids how to do real estate. And it's not, it's like the entry level, if you will. You know what I mean? Because it's all ages. There's 7-year-olds going and 20-year-olds going. So
Yeah, I just, we're talking, my wife and I are talking about having kids and stuff, and I'm like, I can't wait. My kid's going to be the only third grader that knows about return on their investments. They're going to know about, rental properties. They're going to know about all this stuff. And I was actually a public school teacher for 9 years.
oh,
That's how I
nice.
started my career. My wife is a teacher, still a teacher now. And I actually got into real estate investing while I was teaching, and I started my business. And it got too big, and we stopped teaching. But I taught kids about money management, and we taught lower income families, and teaching them about just passive income. Just saying the word passive income and explaining what it is was like would blow their minds. And I loved the idea of teaching younger people about something that the schools were
Don't do.
failing to teach.
Right.
And that's one thing that I'm like so excited to have my own kid and be like, they're going to be so ahead of the curve when it comes to this stuff that they're learning about when the presidents were presidents, which is like great, but they also don't know what passive income is, which is like a
Or how to
crazy
manage
thing.
or balance a checkbook.
Right, exactly. Nothing. I mean, no money management at all. And part of the problem is most of the teachers are broke themselves, so they don't have to manage money because they don't really have any money to manage.
Right.
Most of them. So I was always like, and that's part of the reason we started this podcast is just educating new investors, young people that have never even heard of these terms. And I was blessed that somebody mentored me. That's the only way. My parents didn't invest in real estate. They always thought it was too risky. They didn't want to get a call about a toilet or whatever their excuse was for not getting into it. I was blessed with a mentor that actually was not only my mentor, but he was my first lender, a private lender. If I didn't have that, then I wouldn't have any of the stuff that I have now. I wouldn't know any of the stuff that I know now because there's no resources besides YouTube and podcasts, and you kind of have to go out on your own to learn.
Right.
And I think, educating kids on that stuff is crucial.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the things that got me turned, as far as, like, I was doing 6 deals, right, a year. And when I got into a mastermind, that helped me. And that's how I want to help other people. And that's why I want to help my kids the same way.
Yeah, the group mentality, it's so powerful. Like we went to BPCon, the Bigger Pockets convention.
Yep.
And we came back from that, and one of the things was somebody said in one of the panels or whatever, they were like, start a meetup. Just start a meetup, a local meetup, post about it, start a meetup. Now, Nick and I have had 3 meetups, and the last one we had like 100 people show up. We catered it, we had sponsors, and we had all this stuff. And every single event that we've gotten business from. We've gotten either a client or somebody that we've, used as a contractor or a vendor or whatever. And I would have never thought of having a meetup or catering High Tops. That we actually rented out a room in High Tops and
Oh, nice.
had all these people come. That to me only became because we were told by a big group of people.
Right.
And those people then started talking about syndications at the same event. And we were now, all of us left that event, my business partner, Nick, and the friends that we went with. Syndication was now the new word. Everybody's like, how do we we all have all these single family houses. How do we get the next? And now we're all talking about syndication, and the only reason is because of all the people, like the masterminds or the groups of people that say, is that one of the things that you would attribute your success to, is like one of, is the masterminds and the groups that you're in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, you can only go as far as you know, but
Right.
other people have experienced things that you haven't. So if you can put your heads together and experience those things together, like even if it's a mistake, like you learn from your mistakes. But what if I was learning from your mistakes and you were learning
It's a
from
lot
mine?
cheaper for you. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Right.
it's not only a lot cheaper, but it cuts down time. So it might have taken you 3 years to get where you are. But if you helped somebody else, showed them the ropes and gave them the do's and don'ts, then they'll get there in 6 months.
Right.
Right. So it's funny because like I'm in Bill Allen's 8-figure mastermind, and we sat down last year with Damon John from the Sharks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Fubu.
yeah,
The Fubu guy.
yeah. So we sat down, had an awesome conversation with him, and he sat down with us for like what, a good 30 minutes, and told us about the ins and outs of what he did and how he did it, and how awesome things were for him. Well, not starting out, but they became awesome. But my point is that the way he did it, it took him a while to do. But with the way technology is these days and the way people are getting in masterminds, you can get there in half the time that it took him. That's what he said. He's like, this is amazing. Like, you guys are wealthy people. You guys are successful, and you're sitting down and saying what the good and bad things that you were doing, and how you can help each other. He didn't have that. He's saying I didn't have that, right? If he would have had that back in the day, he would have been a lot farther than he is now. I mean, he's doing awesome now, super awesome guy. But masterminds help. I mean, even if it's like 3 people, two
Right.
people, like we can do a mastermind and it
Right.
helps,
No,
right?
it's true. And one of the things that we picked up from that last event was, it's not only humbling because you think, oh, I have, this many units. I manage this much real estate. I make this much money. And then you talk to somebody else that's at the bar or wherever in this panel, and they're like, oh yeah, I do this. And it's 5, 10 times what you're doing. And you're like, oh wow, I should be doing more. So now I'm like, I got to get to work. How can
Right.
this person? He's the same age. Why does Nick have 80 units and I only have 20 units? It's humbling. And it's like, okay, so I'm doing good, but I'm not doing as good as I could be because other people are in the same age range, but doing a lot more. And I think that was a big thing for me. I left that event and I was like, I got to make more. I got to do more.
Right.
This is not enough. What I'm doing, there's other people doing more. So we got to do more. And before that, I was, like, I can't possibly do another thing. And there's still days that I'm like, I can't possibly do another thing. And I'm like, somebody else is doing it.
Right.
So you got to do it.
Yeah.
It's true.
Well, at the end of the day, too, is what do you love? What do you want to do? And what are your goals? What's your why?
Right. That's true. Well, Nick, you have any other questions for Ben? So we can get him back to his family.
I want to ask you one last question.
Sure.
So, what does retirement look like for you? Because every time I think about retirement and I see other people, I feel like that's when it starts to go downhill when people like actually retire. So, like when you think about retirement, is it unplugging from everything, or you still want to work and do a couple, hours a week and whatever it is that you like the
An
most?
entrepreneurial retirement, I think, looks very different than
Yes,
a
it
retirement
does.
from the workforce.
I was gonna say, do you like? I don't think I could ever stop working, but retirement, I want to be on the beach and I want to be in somewhere warm. Like where our next location for short-term rentals is most likely going to be Turks and Caicos. We're looking at some deals now, but I want to be able to just spend maybe an hour on the computer, checking high level numbers of whatever I need to look at as for properties or businesses that I own, and shut it down. If there's something that needs to have happen, then they'll call the COO of that said company. But other than that, I mean, they won't need me for anything, hopefully.
But you got ultimate control. You still
Yeah,
have the.
I still have my computer. Like it's funny because like when I travel, I've slowly started to take stuff away. Like I used to travel with my computer, my cell phone, my books, my iPad. You know what I mean? Like a lot of stuff. And then I started taking stuff away because after I hired Eric, to my COO, I didn't need some of the stuff, and people stopped calling me, which was great.
I
Yeah.
can't wait for that day.
Yeah.
Which was great. Like so, to answer your question, retirement for me is sitting at the beach with my wife and kids and family, being able to check the computer once or twice a day and only being on it for an hour. Because I can check the computer and I can fall into a rabbit hole
Right.
and
So-
be on
Yeah.
there for a couple hours.
Last question would be, how would that work with your younger kids if at that point they're in, let's say, middle school, maybe starting high school, with traveling, and you know, maybe not be able to stay long, or would you have them homeschooled?
It would be a summer thing or a weekend thing.
Gotcha.
Or we would be traveling in an RV. I don't know. I mean, but at the end of the day, it would be just traveling, making sure the kids are still in school, of course.
Well, 5 years, the 16-year-olds are done.
Well, yeah.
yeah.
I'm talking about
So
the younger
the
ones. They'll
younger
probably
Yeah,
be in.
they'll be what? They're in second grade now, so they'll be in eighth grade. So
Nick's just trying to plan his escape right now. That's all he's doing. He's like, my daughter's 3. I can do okay. You got another. You got a couple more years.
well, yeah. I mean, it would be me traveling on the weekend, and then summertime it's a free for all.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we got for you, Nick. You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Ben?
Thank you for coming.
Everybody's like and subscribe.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Ben, thanks for coming down, man. We appreciate you sitting in traffic for us.